Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Javier Álvarez. Welcome to the European Dilemma on Switching to
Buenas
Permanent
tardes, soy el
Standard
doctor
Time.
Javier Álvarez.
Es
Bienvenidos.
un placer estar con todos vosotros para poder desarrollar y hablar de un tema conflictivo y que a la vez, sin ningún tipo de duda, puede acabar suponiéndonos una mejora en nuestra calidad de vida. Como todos sabéis, 2 veces al año se cambia el reloj, se cambia nuestra hora. Un cambio de primavera-verano, en el cual se adelanta la hora, y el horario de otoño-invierno, en el cual se retrasa la hora. Esto pasa en todos los países de la Unión Europea y pasa desde hace muchos años, es decir, de los años 1960 y 1970. Pero no siempre ha sido así. Haciendo una breve historia, en el siglo XIX, como curiosidad os contaré que cada ciudad, cada territorio, tenía su propia hora, y era una hora quizá mucho más biológica a la que tenemos actualmente, porque se debía esa hora a la luz solar, que al final es la que marca nuestros ritmos biológicos, como después os explicarán. Eso tenía sus ventajas y tenía indudablemente sus importantes consecuencias. Y no fue hasta mediados del siglo XIX, sobre todo por las necesidades desencadenadas por el ferrocarril, que hubo una necesidad de unificar los horarios. Por ejemplo, en aquella época todavía, cuando eran las 12 del mediodía en Barcelona, eran las 11:30, un poquito más, en Madrid. Luego se unificaron, fueron las empresas del ferrocarril del Reino Unido las primeras en Europa que apostaron por esta unificación o que intentaron que se produjese esta unificación, y le siguieron, pues, evidentemente, empresas del ferrocarril de Francia, de Alemania, de todos los países. Y era una necesidad por unificar, sobre todo porque estaba sucediendo algo que una hora diferente, entre otras cosas, más accidentes. Así también pasó en Estados Unidos, aunque tardaron casi 50 años más en unificar las zonas horarias y acabaron teniendo 4 franjas horarias. Después, bastante después, el mercado interior de la Unión Europea vio la necesidad de armonizar nuestros horarios como Unión Europea, ya que esto garantizaba un mejor funcionamiento de todo el comercio interior. Y de esta manera se establecieron 3 franjas horarias, 4 incluso, ¿no? La primera franja horaria, que partía del meridiano de Greenwich como referencia, la que llamamos GMT 0, y la GMT más 1, más 2, más 3 y más 4. En la GMT más 1, por ejemplo, tenemos a países como España, la República Checa, Dinamarca, Francia, Alemania, Hungría, Italia, Luxemburgo, Malta, Países Bajos, Polonia, Eslovaquia. Fijaros, España y Polonia, con la diferencia geográfica que tienen este-oeste, están dentro de la misma franja horaria. Esto sin duda tiene que tener algún tipo de consecuencia para las poblaciones, y después seguro que lo explicaremos. A partir de entonces, la Unión Europea, en 1981, hizo la primera directiva para intentar armonizarlo y para regular este cambio de hora que se producía 2 veces al año, independientemente de las franjas horarias. Y fueron continuas directivas que fueron cambiando, y hasta el año 1994, con la 7ª directiva, no fue cuando se estableció una fecha común para cambiar el horario las 2 veces al año en toda la Unión Europea. Y se estableció como fechas el último domingo de octubre para el cambio de otoño-invierno y el último domingo de marzo para el cambio de primavera-verano. Y es como sigue sucediendo en la actualidad. En el 2001 se extendió sin límite esta última directiva, y en el 2007 la Unión Europea presentó un informe que subrayaba la importancia de mantener armonizada el horario de los distintos miembros de la Unión Europea para poder funcionar adecuadamente en su mercado interno. Pues bien, dada esta breve introducción histórica, nos encontramos desde el año pasado en una nueva encrucijada, porque la Unión Europea, la Comisión Europea, puso en duda este doble cambio de horas. Se preguntó también a la población, ¿no? Pues parece ser que este doble cambio de hora podría terminar si sigue adelante esta propuesta de la Comisión Europea. De hecho, uno de los principales motivos por el que se establecía este doble cambio de hora era por un ahorro energético y aprovechar mejor la luz solar. Pero se ha visto que este ahorro energético en realidad es mínimo. Y sin embargo, el doble cambio de hora puede tener importantes repercusiones para la salud de la población. Por lo tanto, el debate está servido. Yo soy médico, especialista en trastornos del sueño, neurofisiólogo. Llevo 20 años de experiencia viendo distintos pacientes con trastornos del sueño y os puedo asegurar que una de las partes más importantes de nuestra especialidad es la cronobiología y los ritmos biológicos. El sueño no deja de seguir un ritmo biológico. Y la importancia de la luz y cómo utilizamos la luz en nuestro día a día es fundamental para nuestra salud y para nuestro bienestar. La luz del sol es un bien preciado, que en algunos países tenemos la suerte de tenerlo más a nuestra mano y en otros no tanto. Pero, por desgracia, aun teniéndolas muy a nuestra mano, como pasa en el caso de España, la luz natural cada vez es menos utilizada, cada vez estamos más en interiores, vivimos más en cuevas. Sabemos que los especialistas, que lo mínimo de luz natural que deberíamos tener las personas es 2 horas de luz natural al día. Y cuando hablo de luz natural, es estar al exterior. No vale una casa o una oficina muy luminosa, es estar al exterior al menos 2 horas al día y eso es fundamental para regular nuestro sueño, para regular nuestro estado de ánimo, para regular nuestro sistema inmunitario, nuestras defensas, nuestra vitamina D, nuestro sistema osteomuscular. Por desgracia, vivimos más en cuevas que nunca a lo largo de la historia de la humanidad. Y es muy importante en este aspecto, aparte que hagamos pedagogía de la importancia de la luz natural, que tengamos los horarios más saludables para poder facilitar a la población la disponibilidad de esta luz natural. Y sin contaros nada más, porque sin duda los oyentes con los que disponemos nos darán unas explicaciones preciosas y súper valiosas, porque tenemos la suerte de contar con grandes speakers. Primero de todo, quería presentar a Izaskun Bilbao. Izaskun Bilbao is member of the European Parliament. Shadow reporter of the proposal for the directive of the European Parliament and the Council discontinuation seasonal change of time. And she will give us an explanation of the European Union, like the process and key argument for the European Union decision to
i de l'argumentació clau que es fa
today.
a la Unió Europea
Izaskun is going to focus on what are the new
sobre
steps.
aquest tema.
What do you think
Izaskun ens parlarà
can be
de
done
les
to
passes
facilitate
noves
that all the member states and the decision before 2021? Thank you, Izaskun. Welcome. It's your turn.
Gràcies, Izaskun. Benvinguda.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody.
Moltes gràcies.
Bueno, pues
benvingut.
después de esta extensa y buena introducción, voy a deciros que en el año 2018 las instituciones europeas pusieron en marcha un debate sobre los cambios estacionales de hora y este movimiento respondía a una revisión de los criterios que impulsaron esta estrategia centrada en principio en el ahorro de la energía, tal y como lo has comentado. Muchos informes técnicos destacaban que no estaba tan claro que este beneficio se produjera en todos los lugares en los que se efectuaba el cambio, porque el mismo dependía también de factores externos como la climatología y los hábitos individuales de comportamiento. También en ese momento fueron publicándose otros estudios en torno a la influencia que estos cambios tenían en otros ámbitos y entre ellos destacan la influencia en el sueño, en los biorritmos humanos, en el metabolismo y en otros parámetros biológicos. Los informes dejaban claro que el baile de las manecillas que nos regala o nos quita 1 hora de sueño cada primavera o otoño solo es aparentemente inocuo. Al parecer, y tal y como lo comentabas también, afecta especialmente a niños y personas mayores y algunos sectores de actividad como la agricultura y especialmente la ganadería también reportan indicios de que convenía replantearse esta práctica. Estas informaciones y el hecho de que el cambio de hora es uno de los asuntos realmente visibles y que afectan a todo el mundo, propiciaron que la consulta pública que puso en marcha la Comisión Europea como paso previo a plantearse una reforma legislativa batiese todos los récords de las consultas de los últimos tiempos. Nada menos que 4.600.000 ciudadanos participaron en ella. Casi un 90% se inclinaban por acabar con estos cambios estacionales y abrían el camino para cambiar una práctica que se regula desde una directiva comunitaria del 2001, pero que de una manera muy generalizada funcionaba desde la llamada crisis del petróleo que sacudió al mundo en la década de los 70. Para entender la prevención que produce decidir sobre esto, Recordemos también que a principios del siglo XX cada ciudad tenía, tal y como lo has comentado también, su propio horario, y el ferrocarril no solo vertebró el territorio, también el tiempo a obligar a coordinar una hora oficial. En la conferencia del meridiano celebrado en Greenwich en 1884, ya se acordó en señalarlo como un punto cero a efectos de coordinación horaria. Pero la decisión final sobre el horario que rige en un país puede no coincidir con la que le corresponde por longitud. En la España peninsular, por ejemplo, rige desde el año 1940 el horario Z, aunque le corresponde el actual horario canario o portugués. Esta fue una decisión adoptada por la dictadura del general Franco, germanófilo, mientras en aquel país duró el Tercer Reich. Pensemos por un momento que este tipo de arbitrariedades conducen el proceso que sigue a cada Estado para fijar su horario definitivo. Evidentemente, un cambio de esta envergadura no se puede realizar de una manera improvisada o irreflexiva. El tiempo es oro, solemos decir, y lo es porque es una de esas magnitudes que no se pueden comprar ni vender y que nos recuerda nuestra condición contingente o mortal. Quizá por ello conecte también nuestra dimensión racional y emocional. La ciencia física es el campo por excelencia para la razón, para la precisión, para la medida exacta del tiempo, y la música quizás sea el arquetipo de la expresión más acabada de los sentimientos. Paradójicamente, los compases, los acordes, el color y la agrupación de las notas, la tonalidad son, en síntesis, razones matemáticas. No es por ello de extrañar que el tiempo sea la magnitud absoluta que somos capaces de percibir en términos más relativos. El tiempo vuela, suele decir, cuando lo pasamos bien y cuando tenemos prisa, cuando los plazos aprietan. Cuando, por el contrario, nos aburrimos, parece que se ha parado el tiempo. Bueno, con el ánimo de arbitrar en un asunto tan delicado, llegamos a un acuerdo en el Parlamento Europeo que apuesta por acabar con esos cambios excepcionales de horario y diseña un procedimiento para poder hacerlo de una manera armónica y consensuada. Para empezar, planteamos abrir un plazo de 2 años hasta primavera del año 2021 para permitir a los Estados de la Unión decidir si optan por su horario de verano o el de invierno de una manera ordenada y transparente. Además, diseñamos un órgano de coordinación y unos mecanismos tasados de intercambio de información destinados a que todos conozcan a tiempo y sopesen las consecuencias de las decisiones de los demás estados. Así pretendíamos evitar que el mapa de horarios generase nuevas y peligrosas distorsiones en el mercado interior y en los servicios básicos. Por eso el informe proponía crear una comisión evaluadora entre estados y autoridades comunitarias que debía analizar desde abril de este año, del 2020, las propuestas de horario de cada estado e identificar, prevenir y ayudar a evitar posibles problemas. Superada esta etapa de evaluación previa, en el 2021 estaba previsto terminar de una manera ordenada con los cambios estacionales de horario. El acuerdo incluye además un procedimiento de evaluaciones que permitiría comprobar a medio plazo que acabar con los cambios de hora no produce más problemas que los que se pretendían resolver. Grandes divergencias en los Estados miembros y desavenencias con la Comisión Europea por la propuesta presentada en el 2018 mantienen paralizado un expediente que no figura en las previsiones de la actual presidencia del Consejo ni parece figurar en las prioridades de los próximos gobiernos europeos. Apostar por acabar con los cambios es simple, pero decidir en qué horario se coloca cada uno parece que es más complicado, porque las razones a favor y en contra de cada posición están geométricamente enfrentadas. Las horas de luz, el aprovechamiento de las mismas, los hábitos de vida, el clima, la meteorología, están relacionados con la longitud, con la ubicación de un lugar entre meridianos, pero también con la latitud. En las posiciones que han avanzado algunos Estados miembros, este parámetro geográfico es casi tan relevante como la longitud a la hora de tomar decisiones. De hecho, abre un verdadero mar de dudas que además hay que analizar pensando en tu dimensión, tu posición económica y la de tus principales clientes y proveedores. Por eso, hay que observar también lo que decidirán tus vecinos. Por eso, como comentaba en el pleno en el que aprobamos ese acuerdo, si utilizamos bien el plazo de que disponemos para tomar esta decisión, habremos demostrado que el tiempo es oro. Si no acertamos, queda claro que no es oro todo lo que reluce. Los informes sobre los efectos de los cambios de hora, desde luego, dejan claro que no siempre es cierto que el tiempo lo cura todo. En este caso, dilatar la decisión puede que haga más patente los problemas que algunos estudios apuntan que producen estos cambios de hora. Y esta es la situación actual en las instituciones europeas. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Izaskun. Really nice explanation. We will have the answer after the meeting. I don't know if it may be. I don't know if you could. Izaskun, ¿podrás quedarte con nosotros toda la? Creo que no. Creo que Izaskun tiene que marchar. Bueno, ya nos dirá después. Okay, now we go with the next speaker, with María Ángeles Rol de Lama. She's PhD on physiology and she's professor on Murcia University. She studied the impact of circadian rhythm on our health, and she's one of the most important person in our country, and I should say that in whole Europe about circadian rhythm is we have all the doctors that work with the sleep medicine for the last 10 years have learned so many things from them and from her team, and it's very, very important because it's so useful for our patient, and thank you to her, because we can help many patients thanks to her. Okay, María Ángeles, she's going to talk about the impact of the day saving time has in our circadian rhythm. Thank you, María Ángeles.
Oh, thank you very much for your nice presentation. I am not, you have put a little, maybe too high. Let's see if I can reach the expectations. I'm trying to share my, okay, presentation. I think you can see it. Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for the kind invitation to be here. My little talk is going to focus on the impact of DST on the circadian rhythms. But first, and as you will probably know, the circadian system is a network of elements composed by a master clock located in the suprachiasmatic. Just a minute, I'm going to use it. Perfect. By a master clock located in the suprachiasmatic nuclei or the hypothalamus that commands peripheral clocks in almost all tissues and organs. These clocks send this temporal signal to the organism through humoral and nervous signals, including melatonin secretion, and as a consequence, practically all physiological variables show a 24-hour pattern, including the sleep-wake cycle, locomotor activity in animals, body temperature, arterial pressure, or hormonal secretions. But this clock is set every day by inputs. The most important one is the light-dark cycle that sets this clock to exactly 24 hours. But also are important signals, the exercise and feeding schedules, as well as social contacts. Also, some variables can impact the clock. For example, our sleep pattern determines how we do exposure to light. But to be honest, our internal time is not exactly 24 hours, but we tend to live days a little bit longer. In fact, the mean is 24.2 hours. And although chronotypes exist with differences in this period of the REMs, it is true that the natural tendency of our clock is to live to delay or to adjust more easily to delays. This is why we see here this movement of this displacement to the right in the sleep pattern. This is why we can adjust more easily to the fall change than to the spring change. It's quite easy to understand by the audience. If I ask you to go to bed tonight 1 hour later, you will probably have no problems to do that. But if I tell you to go to bed 1 hour earlier than usual and sleep, in fact, you will probably toss and turn in the bed for 1 hour. That's what occurs during the spring shift. But it is also important the phase relationship among these physiological variables, like nodes of a beautiful song driven by the master clock. But during the DST transition, we moved our work time without the parallel change in the sun clock, in the life cycle. This implies that difference must adapt to this new point, and the velocity for resynchronization is different. And for example, for cortisol, takes longer. During this period, we experience internal temporal order impairment. And this is why we feel a little bit discomfort till a new unstable phase relationship is achieved. This is different from jet lag, because in the case of jet lag, we move not only our clock time, but also the sun clock. And since light can help to synchronization, it is easier to achieve the new, let's say, target hour. So it is important that our biological clock is in line with this external environmental timing determined by the life cycle, but also we must live with a clock time that imposes our work and leisure duties. When transition with the DST, the relationship between sunrise and wake time is reset, as this was 3 or more weeks ago. We go back in time. And what are the acute effects of DST? Well, sleep is shortened. We experience worse performance, a slight moderate increase in heart attacks, and an increase in social jet lag. My position is quite simple to maintain, because if we see what the Society for Research on Biological Rhythms, the European Sleep Research Society, the Spanish Society for Sleep, or the Portuguese Sleep Society, they all claim for DST ends. In the meantime, and before knowing the final decision, if you want to score your chronodisruption degree, you can make this 3-time test that is located in our webpage to know exactly if your internal time matches or not your environmental and work schedules. Sorry, I haven't practiced for a long time, and it's difficult sometimes. Just to end, some misunderstandings. We should avoid the term summertime to refer for DST, because it is associated with the positive attributes of summer and the opposite of occurs for winter. So standard time is better for preparing as, let's say, winter time. We do not change the time. We have a lot of times we have seen. We only move our clocks. And also, we do not, let's say, counterbalance the positive or negative effects of the DST. I mean, we cannot, if we assume that the spring change implies negative effects, they are not compensated in autumn, at least not at the individual level. For example, if you have experienced a heart attack. So, nothing else. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Maria Ángeles, for your nice and amazing explanation. I'm sure that we will have questions for you after the next speaker. Okay, now is the time to go to the stage. We have to JP. He is an activist and founder of the Safe Standard Time in the United States of America. Nice to have you with us, Jay. It's your turn. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. And good morning. It's still morning here in San Francisco, so I'm hoping that the sun will come out as this progresses. My name is JP. I'm a software engineer in San Francisco. I'm originally from rural Iowa. I've been a humble advocate for standard time my whole life. It's an interest that stems from my appreciation of astronomy and from my interest in circadian health. I founded Safe Standard Time in 2019 as a response to the sudden push to retry permanent daylight saving time here on the West Coast. The goal of my nascent campaign is to preserve and extend the observation of Standard Time in North America. Standard Time is the best clock for health and safety for children and workers and generally for everyone. And it's also the quickest way to end clock changes to and from daylight saving time twice every year here in the United States, as it's pre-approved by federal law. Any American state can opt out of DST immediately and without Congress simply by restoring its own permanent standard time, as Arizona and Hawaii have already done. A few months ago, I was introduced to Tisha, and she was already assembling what would soon become the International Alliance for Natural Time. Our alliance advocates for permanent observation of natural time across the world. In a practical sense, this simply means geographically appropriate sun-based time zones, which is essentially the same as what we in North America call our standard time. And though each nation in our alliance faces unique political and cultural and political circumstances, I feel confident in the fact that history and science really do support our mission. Natural time is essential for optimal health, safety, education, economy, and even the environment. It really is the simplest and fairest solution to the question of how to set clocks everywhere. And finally, I wanted to say it's been an honor for me personally over these last months to meet so many accomplished scientists and doctors in this field, and I really want to thank you for inviting me to this event.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for your activism in this very important part of the health of our population. It's really nice to travel to San Francisco, always as in the media.
We're glad to have you. Thank you.
Okay, now we have the other part of the alliance in Europe. We have with us to Isia Luengo Hendricks. She's Better Time Advocate. She's co-founder of the International Alliance for Natural Time and the Dutch platform Better Children. She will give us the explanation how is the situation in Netherlands, in the Western Europe, and the key on social environmental argument for ending with the clock changes. Isia, thank you so much. Welcome.
Sorry, there was noise here before, so I had it mute. Yes, thank you. I'm actually half Spanish, and I grew up near Altea in Alicante. So if you look at the map that we saw at the beginning of this piece, you see that the meridian of our natural time zone, of our Western European time, actually runs straight through Alicante. So we could call it, instead of Greenwich Mean Time or London Time, we could also call it Alicante Mean Time. It's a very interesting thing to consider. I live in the Netherlands now, and I've been a better time use advocate for about 10 years now. Started when I discovered that it wasn't having twin babies that made us so tired. It was having to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning in order to get my eldest daughter to school by 8. That was really tiring us out so much, having to do that every day. And also my children were very difficult to wake up at 7. So I researched it, and I started advocating for later school times, later work times, for evening types, night owls. And later we changed, we broadened our scope, and we also we basically advocate for optimal time use for all chronotypes. When the EU proposal was finally made in 2018, we joined other Dutch advocates, and we called ourselves the Health Time Initiative, as opposed to summertime or wintertime, health time. And we were invited to the expert sessions of the government. We wrote an extensive political position paper about this whole subject, about everything, the history, the science, all the aspects of circadian rhythms. And this paper is downloadable from our site in 4 languages, free for everyone. And yeah, I also at that time I also contacted other European advocates, and in doing so I came across the Catalan time use reform initiative, which later became the Barcelona time use initiative, and together, as Jay explained, we formed the International Alliance for Natural Time. Yeah, in the Netherlands, the situation is pretty much the same as in other European countries, that they have not taken a formal position yet, and they are waiting to coordinate with neighbors, and they are waiting for more research. The only difference in the Netherlands is that the decision lies with the Ministry of the Interior, not the Ministry of Transport, as is in the rest of Europe. And this ministry commissioned a study from our Royal Institute for Public Health and Environment, and they concluded that the best thing for Holland would be to abolish daylight saving time and to go back to our permanently go back to our standard time, preferably our natural standard time, which is Western European time. This is also downloadable from our site, this report. And just a second. Yeah, so pretty much all European countries are stating right now that they need more research, they need more impact analysis, they need more evidence. But we say in our International Alliance, we said there's enough scientific evidence, there's enough real-life evidence as well. There have been a number of countries who've implemented permanent daylight saving time and recanted after a few years. And there's also a very simple solution for Europe. It's not complicated at all. We just all have to permanently go back to our natural time zones. And we saw them at the beginning. That's the nice map that you see there. It's very simple. If we all just abolish daylight saving time, go back to the standard times we have already, then you see that Eastern Europe goes back to Eastern European time, which is their standard time, which is their natural time. Central Europe goes back to Central European time, which is their natural time. And we in Western Europe, which is Spain and France and the Benelux, we go back to our standard time, which is Central European time, but we actually should be going back to Western European time. The Alicante mean time, that's what we should be on. And so that is a very simple solution. If you look at the map, the lines are very clear. It would mean that we would be in our own natural time zone, and it would be much healthier for everyone, not just for, it's not just health, it doesn't just have impact on human health, it also has impact on the whole economy. Sorry. As we heard before, it impacts everything, including performance, and also schooling, the school. I lost my train of thought, sorry. Yeah, I wanted to explain that we are currently in Western Europe, we're currently on Central European time, and what that in effect is we have been on permanent, since the Second World War, we've been on Central European time. So we've been on permanent daylight saving time since the Second World War. That's the last 70 years. Then in addition to that, since the 1970s, we've had daylight saving time 6 months of the year, now 7 months of the year. We have had what the French call double summertime. And it sounds really fun, but it is not, because it means we have to get up 2 hours before we should have to get up according to our solar time. And also we have to go to bed 2 hours earlier than we should. And our bodies know this, as we've just heard. And so that's why it's extra difficult for people in Western Europe to get up in time and to go to bed to time. Yeah, that this leads to sleep deprivation, because our bodies cannot really adapt. And all this sleep deprivation leads to a large, it's a huge list of all kinds of diseases and illnesses and problems, mental, physical. Children's development, that's another thing I wanted to mention, that it's very important for our children as well, because teenagers, especially teenagers, temporarily become later chronotypes. All of them, even people who are born as very early birds, become sort of day types. And so they should, now researchers have stated that they should start school at 10 o'clock in the morning. But for us in Western Europe, if you say 10 o'clock in the morning, our natural time, it would actually be 12 o'clock in the clock we use now. So our children our teenagers should not start school until 12 o'clock in our current, summertime. And we actually make them go to school like 4 hours sooner and have to get up even sooner in order to get to school. So we're doing them, we're doing them harm. It's not good for them. It's not good for their development. It's not good for their school results, but especially for their development and their mental and physical health. Also, a lot of mental illnesses develop during the teenage years, and this could be also an influencing factor. So there's a lot of arguments on why we should just do this. It would at least make a difference of an hour. And it would impact everything from our health to our economy. And I was also going to mention the environment. There's also an aspect, an environmental aspect. On the one hand, you have the shift in human activity. If we have rush hour later in the day when it's warmer, for example, especially here in Spain and in France, then you have more pollution because you have rush hour during hotter times of the day. Another aspect is, for example, the light pollution, which takes place, especially more here in the north, in the early mornings when before sunrise people go to work and construction starts working, and they all need these really big lights, which seriously disrupts the living environment. So those were my talking points.
Thank you so much, Ticia. I agree with you. It's a really nice explanation. And I don't know if you know that here in Spain we are the kings of sleep deprivation. We sleep 1 hour less than the rest of the rest of European citizens. It's 1 hour. If you know, you can imagine what it means.
If you look at the map, it's very low because Spain is even to the west of the meridian, which is the worst part to be within a time zone. The more west you are, the more sleep deprived you are. There's also been studies done within time zones. So,
I think that Maria Angeles is going to explain. Maybe I would like to ask her about this because I know that they have many studies that say when it depends how people work depending on when the sun rises. And I agree with you. Another funny thing. I agree with Alicante meridian because my medicine study was done there in Alicante, so it maybe should be a coincidence, and then we stop with Greenwich and put Alicante. It's just a joke. Okay, now we have time for discussion and for answer. And maybe Maria Angeles, if you want to talk, it's possible that you give any explanation of this kind of...
I agree with her. That's true. I mean, differences in light exposure according to longitude occurs in Spain because our country is wider than just one clock hour. So you have the problem of choosing which one is best, because what fits for Alicante is not so good for Santiago de Compostela. So it's difficult. Anyway, objectively, there is a simple way to try to make an approach. In our lab, for example, we have made several simulations considering possible scenarios. I mean, impermanent standard time, impermanent summer time, with the Central European time, and so on, 4 different Spanish locations. And you can see with the standard working time that, well, we can talk about that. But you can see how much light do you receive in the morning and how much in the afternoon. This is important because light in the morning has the capacity of advancing your clock, while light in the afternoon makes the opposite and delays your clock. So if you want to find a, let's say, ideal situation, you will try to find in which position you receive as much light in the morning than during the afternoon, and then your clock will be, let's say, stressed. Okay, and with these simulations, you can make a, let's say, more objective decision. Because anyway, if you make the decision, for example, in summer, she was talking about adolescence. If the natural tendency during this period of life of being a later chronotype is increased by exposing them during the summer to this long evening with a lot of light, then this tendency increases. You generate a positive feedback instead of a negative feedback that normally in physiology corrects the deviation.
Yes, this is, I read one news from one, I think it was 2029, and said that in Venezuela they closed, they changed the clock, they postponed 1 hour the school start time, and was wonderful for the adolescent that you are saying. But the bad news was that after that paragraph I read that they stopped with this change 5 years after. So it's something that is really is hard to know why, because we have experience in the States, in California, about the time of when high school starts, and I know that you have very good experience that seeing that if you start later, the adolescents have better performance, better health, better mood disorders.
Yes, there's a group in the United States called Start School Later, and they've been at this for many years, and they've recently made great strides, passing a bill in California to start school later, literally, and then it's quickly spreading to other states, and it's a good sign. It's a good progression. There's a challenge though in that there are politicians that are supporting Start School Later and also supporting permanent daylight saving time, and if you are moving the clock forward an hour and moving schedules forward an hour, they just cancel each other out, and you gain nothing but an inaccurate clock. Really, we should be restoring permanent standard time and moving the start of school later, and hopefully certain workers as well. There are many industries that are starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, just like schools are starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we should look at it. Is this the best thing to do for our health and our safety? When Tisha was talking about the environment, I was thinking also of they found in the state of Indiana that they weren't always on daylight saving time. They were on standard time year-round until the early 21st century, and I think it was in 2007 that they adopted the switching of clocks, the seasonal daylight saving time. So there was a study done by Cochin and Grant to look at the economy of this and the environmental impact, and they found that with daylight saving time, we are forcing people out of bed an hour early, and that causes them to get up in the dark and in the cold, and they turn their heat on. So when they would normally be, it's healthy to be sleeping when it's a bit chilly. It helps you sleep. So people are running their heat in the morning more, and then in the evening they're running their air conditioning more, and they have found that this increased residential and commercial and governmental electricity bills by several millions of dollars, and it was also increasing pollution. So there are. When I look at who's supporting permanent daylight saving time in North America, it's usually the local chamber of commerce. There's a theory that if people get off work and the sun is still out, they're going to drive their car and go to the shopping mall. And I would counter that and say so much shopping now is being done online, not so much in retail, and that's a natural progression that has been expedited through the pandemic. But even if we were benefiting this niche of the economy, we are, at what cost? It's found that it's harming our health, harming our safety, and it's even harming our productivity across all sectors. When you're forcing people out of bed an hour early and then keeping them up an hour late in the evening, they are losing sleep. We're losing an average of 19 minutes sleep every night that we maintain daylight saving time. And that hurts productivity, and it's even been found to lower wages by 3 to 5%. So it's in the end, it's not good for the economy. It's not good for the average worker. And all that aside, even if it were good for the energy policy, which it's not, even if it were good for the economy, which it's not, at the end of the day, the most important thing is public health and public safety. And it is hugely detrimental to be doing this to the public. And I think that should be our number one priority.
And if I could say one more thing about the later school times, there have also been studies done in the Netherlands and in Russia, and there's evidence that children perform better in school, especially on the STEM subjects, if they do their tests in the afternoon instead of the morning, and if they start school later, they just perform better. There's evidence for this. It's very simple, and it's not that some people think they'll just sleep, they'll go to bed later and sleep later, and it doesn't matter. The children actually get 1 hour more of sleep if they do that. So yeah, this translates back to eliminating daylight saving time and living in your natural time zone. This would really impact our children as well.
So if we have some question for the audience, and this in this line is, I say, for example, the Spanish Expert Committee, created in 2018, was unable to reach an agreement on which would be the condition for European countries. So, this argument against the...
Perdoneu, però el so fluctua moltíssim.
Can't hear you.
No et sentim.
Javier, we can't hear you.
Javier, és que no et sentim.
You can hear me. Okay, I'm going to try again.
Bé, torno a intentar-ho.
Hello?
Hola?
So, let's try again. Can you hear me now, María Ángeles?
Yeah, you can.
Ara, María Ángeles?
Try again.
Ara sí, vinga, torna-hi.
I'm going to try again. Okay. So, how can it be possible that the expert committee, the Spanish expert committee, that was unable to reach an agreement on what will be the correct decision for Spain? And similar issues have happened in the rest of the European countries. So, the question is, which are key arguments against stopping this time? And do they have any supported but evidence?
En contra de la interrupció.
I'm sorry, but I can't answer because I'm subjected to confidentiality with regarding the decisions and discussions in this committee. So I can tell you my opinion, but not the opinion of the remaining members of the committee.
You're having enough with your opinion, Maria.
Okay, well, in my opinion, as a chronobiologist, and I have said, it's quite simple because there is no disagreement at all. I mean, all chronobiologists tell exactly the same. It is better to stop with the DST change because it is not clear the advantages, and even although the evidence, for example, in the case of heart attack, is only a moderate increase with a huge range between 4% and 25%, it's just better to avoid. It's the presence of precaution, you know? If you know that something perhaps is dangerous, it's better to avoid it, even in that case. But still there is sufficient evidence, at least for sleep, for performance, and for discomfort in people, and especially in sensitive populations, as we have mentioned here, that includes not only child and adolescents, but also older people. In this case, for example, they take longer to be adjusted to every clock change. So it's better to avoid it.
Així doncs, millor evitar-ho.
Okay. Okay. Maybe in 1 year or some month we can know all the information after the confidential. Maybe I will ask you again in some months.
I know. Well, they were supposed to tell everybody. I mean, a public document with the results, but till that point, you have to wait.
I think that it's also a part of it is the fact that we've had it for so long. It's been 50 years.
Yeah, we are used to, you mean.
Changing something that people are used to is always difficult. People think it's normal, people are used to it, and people who do not suffer from it themselves have a hard time imagining that other people suffer from it. So that's also a point. People prefer that they have their long evenings and they don't care if other people have severe sleep shortage because of it.
Yeah, but in this case, I think that also language is very important. This is why we should avoid this summertime, wintertime.
A long summer night.
Yeah, because everybody thinks in summer, vacations, relax, you know, so everything is positive.
And it's not just the summer months, it's 7 months of the year.
Yeah.
And because of it, in Holland, our children have to go to school in the dark for 5 weeks every year in the winter. If they were on Western European time, they would never have to cycle to school in the dark. That's the difference. We now have 5 weeks of darkness that they have to get up so early.
But also, there is something very easy, let's say. Again, as the example I have said about going to bed 1 hour earlier or 1 hour before, tell people when do they go to sleep during working days and ask again during weekends. And you will see the difference. This implies we are short in sleep during the week and we try to recover this during the weekend. And you can't recover the sleep. You know, this is what is exactly jet lag. And in Spain, it's quite common, not only in adolescents. We have seen it even in older people that are supposed to not have, let's say, work duties to get up in the morning at a specific hour. This implies it's something that is quite common in Spain. You know,
something that we're used to. It's like it's normal that you wake up.
Okay, we have two. Sorry, it's very interesting, but we have just two more minutes, and we have the last question. I would like to have one minute for Ticia and 1 minute for Jay, 1 minute for Maria Angeles. Just is a very important question. What do you think that can be done to facilitate the member states take a decision before ending 2021? Difficult question, it's the last one. Do your best.
És una molt bona pregunta i és la darrera,
Well, here in the United States, of course, we're not members of the European Union, so I don't know if I can answer that question. But here in the United States, we do have the unique situation of we have several states passing bills in either direction, and we have provinces in Canada that are discussing going one way or the other. I am really hopeful that the lawmakers, the politicians, will actually listen to the scientists and look that we do have very clear evidence from studying millions of people across several years at almost every latitude and longitude that permanent standard time really does have the clear advantage. And we also see it historically when we in the United States tried permanent DST in 1974, it was quickly reverted, but after the loss of lives and money, it was reverted in the United Kingdom, it was reverted in Russia. So I'd really like if the lawmakers would look at the evidence, look at the history, and just go with the clear and simple solution of restoring permanent standard time. And given that we're in a pandemic and we're facing lockdowns and curfews, I would really hope that we can do this before the next clock change here in North America. That's coming up very quickly on March 14th. I'm writing letters, I'm making phone calls, I'm reaching out to everyone I can in my spare time to lobby to prevent that upcoming clock change. If we hit that clock change, then I'm, of course, hoping that it'll be the last spring forward and we will fall back at the end of the year, and that would be the end of it.
Thank you, Jay.
I agree. That's what we can do. We can divulge the information that we have, all the research, and try to get it to the right people, the right social organizations who also have a stake in this, and the educational boards and all the different kind of social organizations, to help them understand the importance of the issue, and they can help maybe educate the politicians and the decision makers about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I would say try to make accessible scientific evidence so people can make let's say, informed opinion when deciding, not only by, let's say, our prompt response to a question of what do you like, summer or winter? No, it is not as simple as that, and people must know this. So these kind of initiatives are very welcome, because they open a window for showing people what we know about these DST changes and how affect health and other aspects of our life.
Thank you, Maria. We are on time. Thank you so much for the wonderful, amazing speakers. Thank you to the organization. Thank you to those help us get our fight, help us to get our healthy life, healthy hours, and enjoy with our life, and because it's very important for all our health. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Gràcies per convidar-me. Adéu.